Hey guys, Andrew Esquivel here, back with another review, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Morimoto MotoController for 9004 or 9007 headlights. One thing I'd like to address right away is the fact that out of the box, this is set up specifically for 9004 headlights. So if you're like me, and I have a 2003 Mitsubishi Outlander, your car is probably different, but in my car I have 9007 headlights. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the connector is the same between 9004 and 9007, but the pinout configuration for the wires is in a different orientation. The orientation you see right in front of you is for 9007. I've already done the swap. You don't need any sort of conversion harness. These pins are really easy to get out. On the bottom, if you're facing the connector like this, on the bottom you push up on the very ends right there. There's a little clip that kind of comes down and you want to push it back up, and then you should be able to gently, and keyword gently, pull those wires out, and then you can arrange them like such to make them work with 9007. So when you first get it, if your car is 9007, your high beams and your low beams will be backwards. So when you turn your car on, your high beams will be on, even though it's supposed to be on the low beams. Switch it to high beams, and the low beams come on. That's why you need to change the pin configuration. Once you do so, you're good to go. So it begs the question, why would you spend the extra money for this part from Morimoto when you can get these cheap adapters that basically do the same thing so long as you've got an additional wire harness, which you can get for cheap. Now, my previous wire harness was not cheap. This is from Hella. So this is a very beefy wire harness, and did a really good job. But the reason I switched over to the Morimoto part is because it does the same function as this. This is what actuates the flap inside of a bi-xenon projector. So going up and down that flap that opens up to let the top portion of the light shine down the road, you need one of these. And the old one that I had that was cheap actually burned up and almost caught on fire. And yeah, it killed one of my Morimoto ballasts. So I decided that maybe cheap parts are not a good thing to put with higher end parts. Morimoto is not the highest end stuff, but it's pretty darn good. It's pretty high up there. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to risk burning up another expensive part on something that was cheap. So instead of using one of these, I decided to go with this. So in actuality, this device does two things in one, where before I needed two things to do the same thing. I would need first this wire harness so I can draw power directly from the battery and not the plugs themselves that are in the car. And two, I needed this relay in order to actuate that flap inside of the projector to switch between high and low beam. This device from Morimoto does both, and in fact, it does one more little thing that's rather clever. There's a capacitor in there, and it holds electricity. This is important because when you switch between the high and low beams in a vehicle that was never designed for something like this in the first place, there's a delay in electrical current. So that small delay will cause cheap devices like this to force the headlights to have to warm up again. And granted, it's only like a fraction of a second, maybe a second at most, to get back to peak brightness, but that small moment is annoying. And sometimes, I experienced this when I first did my retrofit with the cheap parts, that can cause the light to simply just not turn on at all. It'll lose power, and you have to cycle the power back and forth to get it to turn back on with these cheap parts. This capacitor helps eliminate that problem, and that's rather neat. When I turn the lights on, and here's a good demonstration of it. So I'm turning it on. See, I've got light, and the HIDs have to warm up. They take a few seconds. Let's say that's warmed up. Now, this is how I can tell there is a capacitor in there. I'm going to switch this off. The lights will turn off. And I'll tell you exactly when I flip the switch, but you'll notice the lights won't turn off immediately like they did before. So 3, 2, 1, off. See, there was a little bit of a delay. And that's good. That's that little capacitor, and they're holding a little bit of electrical charge. So when you switch between the high and low beam, you don't get that issue where one light might not turn on, the lights might fail, and you have to cycle the power on it. That's cool. That's good. That's an extra little thing that Morimoto thought about that you just can't get from a simple relay. These simple relays don't have a little capacitor to do that. Now, for as many good sides as there are with this product, and there are a lot of good sides, it's a very well-built product. Granted, the wires are not as heavy-duty as the stuff from Hella, but they come with some protective plastic coating around them, so any abrasions on the wires shouldn't harm them, which is nice. However, let's talk about the wires. We have to have a connection to the battery, to the ballast, to a ground, and to the actuator right here. Here's the problem. We do have to make this long travel all the way over to the other side and get to this ballast. And you'll notice this is not a Morimoto ballast. Like I said, that old cheap part blew up. Well, it didn't blow up. It killed one of my ballasts, so I'm using a cheap part for now. But it has to make it all the way from there to here. I don't have as much wire as I'd like. This wire set should be longer. It's just straight up. It needs to be longer. Okay, you can get extensions, and that's fine. The only extensions I need would be like a 9006 connection that connects to the ballast. So this right here. It's a simple connection. They're probably dirt cheap, and I like to keep my ballasts a little further up here. And I just have to cram things in a very awkward place right now. So just know that even in a car like an 03 Outlander, and make no mistake, an 03 Outlander is a relatively small vehicle. It's not like a Nissan Juke small, but it's definitely smaller than a lot of other vehicles out there. So be aware, it's not long. The wire harness I got from Hella is long. This thing can route, and I bet you can route this in any truck and you'd be fine. But for a small crossover, Morimoto should have done a little better and gave us more length. Beyond that, I see no particular problems. Everything functions as it should, at least so far. And unlike before, where I was working with 9004 connections that I had converted, I have a little converter to go from 9007 over to 9004, because that's how my headlights came when I got this pre-made retrofit, right? It was nice to see that Morimoto made something that goes directly into 9007, so I got less converters, going from here and there. And, I like converter wires because then there's no permanent splicing that has to be done. Also, another thing to note about conversions is the actuator wire is a 9006 connection, and that is great if you are running a Morimoto headlight housing. So if you're running like the Mini H1s or something, it uses a 9006 connection for the actuator. Now the universal standard uses Molex, and this is what Molex looks like right here. So I decided to just go on Amazon and get a cheap converter, and actually the converter is not all that cheap. It actually does a really good job, and it works just fine. So I'm just going to stick with that. Again, the less conversions, the better. There's less points of failure at that point. But, be aware, Morimoto 9006, universal Molex. And that's pretty much it, man. The wires do what they're supposed to do. They're rated for 35 watt ballasts or the 50 watt ballasts from Morimoto. I've been impressed with just about every product that I've got from Morimoto. And make no mistake, I've paid for every single product. These are not things that companies have sent me. I pay good money for them because they're good quality things. So I'm expecting this to last a while. Granted, these are temporary locations for everything because I got to move so many things around when I get those extension wires that I've been talking about. But hopefully, this shows you a bit more about the real-world application and installation and problems you might come into contact with when using this particular wire harness.
If you like this video, leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing.